All right. What if OCP a la Robocop was real? What if OCP, known for controlling Detroit but implying the rest of the country, was a real thing? Now, of course, you can go ahead and say, well, but it is because corporations control everything in the United States. Herka-durka-doo, And to a point, that is correct, but I also don't think that OCP, well, I'll put it this way, is it's done by NGOs. The NGOs are the ones that have the power. If it was an outright, like I say, this is why, to a point, OCP wouldn't really be a thing because it would be too out there in the open and be too obvious. NGOs get money from various, you know, various sources, the U.S. government included. But I think that if the United States fell apart, you wouldn't, like I say, I mean, we imagine an OCP sort of thing and, sort of, McDonald's rules over the land or something like that. Well, McDonald's is owned by Brits, but, it's owned by a British company. Or whichever. I mean, you find out that a lot of these places, a lot of these companies are owned by foreign entities. And you're just like, So really, I mean, I don't really believe that OCP a la Robocop could really be a thing but that was the 80s, though. It was the 80s when, you could think that. And it's, like I say, it's a cool movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it, the original one. The second and third, not really worth it, but they're good for a laugh. But what I was gonna say is, I was watching Zexizi's video on talking about revolutions and critiquing ContraPoints, and he made some very big factual errors. He talked, of course, about these, Russian Revolution and saying that, yeah, I mean, there was a revolution, but it wasn't violent, and it could have been the first fascist country and all this. Just like, um, the Bolsheviks did lock out the current. I mean, he didn't mention the word Kerensky once in that. He talked about provisional government, but even though Kerensky was a lib ultimately, or maybe a suckdam, I just think it's ridiculous for him not to mention that. Of course, saying that, oh well, the Red Army was a peaceful thing and whatnot. I'm like, what? What is he talking? It's like, I need some context on that. And then of course he talked about the Freikorps. The Freikorps is the various Freikorps, because the Freikorps is not one thing. He didn't mention that at all. He said that apparently that the Freikorps they all just turned into the SS, and I'm like, no, the SS became its own thing. Yeah, it may have been made up of Freikorps members, but it's like, let me see here. Let me get a whole list because I think it's important. Yeah, Freikorps. Okay, Freikorps. Here we go. Because, like I say, Freikorps was not one. They weren't one thing. Let me see here. Post World War One. Here we go. So there's a whole list of them. I think that, yeah, here we go. Freikorps groups and divisions. I'm going to list them off here. You got Iron Division, Volunteer Division of Horse Guards, Freikorps Kaspari, Freikorps Lichtschlag, Freikorps Epp, of course, Franz Ritter von Epp. This is the one that has more of the Nazi folks in it because, of course, Franz Ritter von Epp was involved in that. You had Ernst Röhm, Rudolf Hess, Edward Dietl, the famous Gebirgsjäger general, Gebirgsjäger, Hans Frank, Georg Strasser, and Otto Strasser. Freikorps Lützow, Marine Brigade Erhard. Of course, Erhard was not part of the Nazi government, as far as I can recall. Marine Brigade Lohenfeld, Freikorps Merker, Freikorps Oberland. That's a fairly big one. I remember when I read Ernst Röhm's book about that. Freikorps Oberland was mentioned quite a bit. Freikorps Rosbach, Sudetendeutsches Freikorps. So basically, the Sudetenland, the Czech Germans, the German nationals in, however way you want to put it. Volksdeutsche, if you will. So that's a lot of Freikorps. But to simplify it and say, oh, well, the Freikorps, they were all one thing, is hugely unrealistic. And the Freikorps did disagree, some with Hitler. I think that a lot of them, they were just nationalists. And I think to try to compare it with the Proud Boys, I think is somewhat unrealistic. I think, yeah, it's different circumstances. I'll put it that way. Just different circumstances. And not all the Freikorps succeeded. Some of them did get their ass whooped. I was reading this, mostly a picture book, but, talking about the fact that, the German communists took over the Ruhr, and they went in and were able to defeat them. But because of that, because they were in the Ruhr and they were a little too close to the Allies, they were forced to retreat. So, like I say, just very bad, bad video. And of course, the last one, of course, he talked about was the Spanish and the Catalonia. And I was like, and of course, he left out the concentration camps that the that the CNT FAI had, left out the fact that Catholic churches were destroyed, the unification between the Phalangists and the Carlists and the military. That those were all complicated things, but they don't really want to talk about those. Most of this is about Sexizzi and not even really about OCP, because I think it's a silly question. But I thought I wanted to pose this because I think it's ridiculous where he's just like, well, we'll just gain power and we'll talk to folks and whatnot and touch grass and all that. And it's just ridiculous. Lefties don't want to talk to ordinary people. They would prefer to LARP online, just as a lot of righties would do. And generally speaking, the U.S. is not as bad off as people think it is. He, of course, mentioned the burning down of of the attacks in 2020, saying that they weren't connected to any political movement. Yeah. But the thing is, did they do that for political reasons because they cared that much about George Floyd, or was it because they just wanted a chance to get and loot stuff? That's, like I say, a lot of folks, they would rather just be political about it and try to make sense of it that way. But to me, it's just ridiculous. You don't have to make things complicated. You don't have to. You can, but I mean, you don't have to. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Anywho, I think that's all I got. This is kind of shorty video, really. I don't think OCP would exist in the same way, basically. I think OCP would be more of an NGO. Like I say, it's in the 80s context of corporations rule everything. They're so evil, and they've got the old man and all that, who's fairly gregarious, really. I mean, he's made out to be that way in all the movies and even the TV show. He's like, nice shooting, son, and all that business, And of course, it's all the underlings that are the bad guys, generally speaking, And they're, like I say, it's a very complicated thing. But I think corporations, and of course, just owing to capitalism, is that you see just how ridiculous it is. I mean, watching a lot of Bright Sun films and his videos, seeing about, this business was owned by this company, and then it was owned by that company, in 2008 market crash. You see how ridiculous it is, and you give corporations way too much power than they deserve. That's my view. Anyway, I'm glad I kind of did a part 2. I was gonna do an original one where it said snort coke and what if OCP a la Robocop existed, but anyway, I'm glad I did the second. I did a take 2 and made it a little bit better. Anyway, see you later. A goodbye.